Braxton from Anchor here. We got a trade to talk about today. I hadn't even looked into when the NBA teams are allowed to start trading yet, so I was taken a little bit off guard, but we got a good one to talk about. So let's map this out here. We have the Oklahoma City Thunder are sending Josh Giddey to the Chicago Bulls in exchange for Alex Caruso. So no picks, swaps, protections, anything like that attached to it. Just straight player for player. So off the bat, I tweeted about this immediately too. I like the fit for both sides. I honestly love this trade for both sides. I didn't really, hate either one. Both teams are in a position financially where, OKC can easily absorb Caruso's cap in addition to probably pay him a little bit more when he's ready to make more money. And more cap flexibility heads over to the Chicago side with Giddey. Let's first focus in on Alex Caruso here. So Alex Caruso absolutely had a career year with Chicago last year. And a lot of this was due to players missing in Chicago. So Caruso's minutes being spiked up over 5 minutes per game compared to the 2022-2023 season. And the biggest effect we saw on that was scoring, in addition to more defense, which is what Caruso provided in the first place. That's always the player we've known him to be. Some assists, great steals, and out of position blocks. He's at least shown for the past three seasons of his career to be a guard that's proficient at getting blocks. So that's what we like to see. But last year's numbers were so big due to the heavy minutes, playing almost 30 minutes a night at Chicago. And we have a really hard time seeing that happening in OKC. One with players already there like Lou Dort and Cason Wallace. In addition to that, we have to factor in the additional development of Cason Wallace too. So looking at Caruso, his numbers might go back down towards to his the year before last in Chicago, where his points were down and the other numbers were just a little bit deflated because he was playing less minutes. But the other side of this deal is Josh Giddey getting a new opportunity. So that's why I'm joined by Braxton here today, somebody who's followed Josh Giddey very closely and really likes to use him in a fantasy and dynasty, especially dynasty formats. So Braxton, talk to us about Josh Giddey's dynasty value. How do you like his fit and just ultimate outlook for him in Chicago?
Yeah, I think if you're a Giddey owner, this is really the move you've been waiting for. The only better landing spot I can think of, I know there were some discussions about maybe going to Washington. That probably been pretty good for his value as well. But Chicago, I think, is great, especially with them angling towards maybe rebuilding a little bit. I know they have a top 10 protected pick next year owned by, I believe, San Antonio. So there's some incentive there for them to trade Levine away as well as Caruso. I know they had some offers of a first round pick or something at the deadline. I do like this more than a first round pick, even if it is a top 10 pick. I definitely think Giddey goes in the top 10 in this draft. And yeah, in regards to his fantasy value, he was never going to go back to his highs of the 22-23 season with the emergence of J-Dub and Chet Holmgren. Him going to a lottery team is going to do wonders for his value. So in the 22-23 season, Giddey was ranked 84th on the year. He had averages of 16 points, 8 rebounds, which is incredible for a guard, 6 assists, and then 0.8 steals, 0.4 blocks, as well as a 1 3-point game, 1-3 per game, and percentages of 73 at the line and 48 at the field goal level. So last year, we did see a little bit of regression statistically for Giddey, and I want to emphasize statistically because the decreases in counting stats are directly correlated with the decrease in minutes that he saw. He dropped down just a little bit with those more high usage guys, like I mentioned, of J-Dub and Chet Holmgren. Sorry, let me just pull up his averages for last year.
And while you're doing that, it's important to note that in addition to Shea, J-Dub, and Chet taking on more offensive usage, them carrying the offensive load made OKC want to focus more on defense for their supportive players, which is something more well provided by their new rookie from last year, Cason Wallace, obviously Lou Dort. Aaron Wiggins is another option in that field too. And then also pure shooting with guys like Isaiah Joe too, which all of those things is not really something that Giddey fits into. But when he's in a fresh slate on a new team, that's what we're really focused on here. So as an avid OKC watcher, I saw, it was in OKC's plan to reduce his minutes and then kind of just phase him out eventually, which a lot of us figured they were going to phase Giddey out eventually and move him. But it did come a little bit sooner than we expected. So carrying on your point about Giddey, Rex.
Yeah, so that, like I said, that decrease in stats was really correlated to those minutes, like you were just talking about. He averages 12 points, 6 boards, and 4.8 assists per game, as well as 0.6 steals and blocks. But that was still good enough for 118th on the year in 9cat on hashtag. I really think Giddey, you've seen he improved in his free throw shooting year to year. He went from 73 to 80 this past season, and his 3-point shooting increased from, I believe, 31 to 33 on a little bit more volume. So, that's something you like to see as well. And the idea being, if he gets more touches and has the ball in his hands more, and he gets back up to that 30 minutes per game that he was playing in 22-23, with these improvements, I mean, I think the sky could be the limit for him. It's really interesting to see what happens with LaVine, because if they trade him somewhere and they don't get a ton of high usage guys back, Giddey could really be in store to have a nice season. Like I just said, combine that with the improvements from at the line, as well as behind the 3-point line. And a top 55-60 season is not out of the question, in my opinion. We know the counting stats are going to be there regardless, and they definitely have an incentive to give him a huge leash as well, unlike Oklahoma City, who was competing for a title last season.
Mm-hmm. And Chicago doesn't really have a ton of players that fit in the Giddey archetype too. I'm trying to recall if Patrick Williams is under contract with them or not for next season. He might
he needs a new one.
So is he restricted?
Yep.
Potentially. Okay, so that just opens up a hole right there if they do let Patrick Williams walk. So we might see the future Chicago outlook be centered around like Kobe White and Josh Giddey, which could be exciting times for Chicago moving forward. They might obviously tank for a better draft pick in the upcoming draft. We still need to see where they're going to go, because they do still have Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. DeMar DeRozan is an unrestricted free agent, so we're going to see which direction Chicago pivots to here. But if you are Chicago, a team who doesn't really like to tank and tries to stay competitive, make ticket sales, it makes sense. This even happens in like Dynasty too, where instead of moving your veterans like Alex Caruso for a pick to start over brand new, you instead move a veteran like Alex Caruso for an under 23-year-old that's playing heavy minutes that is going to be able to, give you some run on your team. And that's what Chicago went with here. They got younger, but they got a guy who's already proven that he can at least start or have an integral role off the bench for an NBA team. And he's still only 21 years old, so there's years worth of development left in his game, especially now that he's going to have more freedom to operate.
I just want to add on to what you were saying there. Like you just said, he's 21 years old. He's still draft age, and a guy who has the nightly triple-double threat that Josh Giddey is. I mean, literally, not this past season, but the season before, he almost averaged a double-double with 16 points, 8 boards, and then 6 assists. That's crazy. And the fact that people are, roasting Chicago online, whatever, because they didn't, and I know that stats aren't everything, right? But they're roasting Chicago online because, they had an offer of a potential top 10 pick for Caruso at the deadline last year. It's like, if you pick somebody like Giddey in the top 10, I feel like you'd be pretty happy with that. I don't know if that's
I want to say that
controversial of a take.
Yeah, I want to say there's at least, like, in consideration for top 10 or lottery, at least like 6 or so of those guys are older than Giddey. We need to add that into for this year. At least half of the lottery is almost as old or older than Giddey.
Yeah, and I just think it's way blown out of proportion. Obviously he didn't play a ton in that playoff series in Oklahoma City, but like I mentioned earlier, this is a team trying to compete for the title, right? Yeah. They don't have a lot of incentive to play him 30 minutes every single night, especially if he's struggling. A team that's not is going to play their young players most of the time, regardless if they're winning or losing. If they're focused more on player development, right? So I think this is excellent for Giddey's value. I do want to circle back around to Caruso for a second. I know you talked about him earlier, but I do think last year was a potential outlier year for Caruso. He essentially doubled his points with his counting stats saying somewhat similar. He went from 5.6 points per game to 10. And that was without LaVine, obviously. And then he an increase in minutes by 5 from, I believe it was 23 to 28. And then the assists and rebounds were both 3.5, both seasons. And he did see some slight increases on steals and blocks as well. But, that can be attributed to him just being on the floor a little bit more. I do wonder if this is really bad for Caruso's value on a more competitive team. You know, he's not going to get nearly as many offensive touches as he did in Chicago, sans Levine. And you know, if he's coming off the bench, it's also very possible he doesn't play the 28 minutes per game that he was playing in Chicago. If he slides in that 24, 25-minute role Giddey had, it's possible we see him come back down from that top 65, 70 season that he had this year to outside the top 100 once again, depending on, you know, how many
And
if he averages two steals, obviously.
Caruso was always known for assists and defense as a 9-category asset. That's what you had him for. Last year, the additional threes and scoring was kind of just extra gravy on top. So that's what we've known Caruso to be, is just those point guard stats kind of specialists. I mean, you know, obviously, like assists wise, there's way better passes out there, like, you know, like a TJ McConnell or something like that. There's guys that are way more valuable or reliable sources of assists too. So primarily what Caruso provides is defense, which is still valuable. There's guys out there who will roster Matisse Thybulle for that exact reason. So you know, Caruso does offer a little bit more flexibility because of that. And obviously, from a real life basketball perspective, a trio of Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, and Alex Caruso is absolutely nasty defensively wise. I have a feeling next year you might even see Cason like playing heavier minutes or potentially even starting within that role, like either in place of Dort or just in place of Giddey in the lineup there, just because of the excellent shooting that he showed last season. So further development from Cason could be a threat to both Caruso and Dort, but I think OKC has a clear plan in mind for players like that. Obviously, the offense revolves around Shea, J-Dub, and Chet. So complementary players like Isaiah Joe, Lou Dort, Cason Wallace, you know, help out a ton. And we'll see if they end up picking up a big man in this draft too. So that's going to do it for us today. A good trade to break down, and hopefully we're going to be able to break down some more trades for you either on draft day, leading up to draft day. We'll see what the NBA has in store for us. So leave a comment below. Let us know what you think about this trade. Which side do you think won? And what do you think about our dynasty takes on the outlook for these two guys as well too? So it seems like a little bit of a expected decrease in output from Alex Caruso and an increase in output from Josh Giddey. So thank you again for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and we'll see you later.